you give me an example of something like that?
Well, that's all I got to see, but let me think over that. So like, let's just say, I don't know, like you're arguing about, there's two groups arguing about something. You know, two groups talking about something that you don't agree with them, but everyone else in the group agrees about that. But you don't. But you know that they're gonna like get mad at you or hate on you if you don't, if you say what you think. So you just agree with what they're saying, even though you don't actually agree with it.
How easy do you think it is to do that to people? Pretty down? Was this, the 10th time I'm asking you that this today, was it this class I was talking to about the ash line experiments?
Who is that?
No? Okay, I think it was 6th period. Okay. All right, so there's a psychologist, his name is Ash. I can't remember his first name. There's a singer named Daniel Ash, but that's not it. But you look up the ash line experiments, and you can see these on YouTube. And they kind of work like this. I've done them in my class before. I would stand up here and I'd go, oh, I need a volunteer. Can I get a volunteer? So I'd be okay, cool. And then I'd give you a pass, and I'd say, can you go over to Pelletier's room? I think he's in like 151, I think it is, something like that. And ask him for the striped paint. I need the striped paint for today's activity. You go, okay. So he goes over and he asks Pelletier for the striped paint. Pelletier, of course, says, oh, I don't have it. I lent it to Griggs. She's up in room wherever she's in. You need to go see Griggs and get. So you go up there and you ask Griggs for the striped paint. She sees it and she sees Pelletier signed it. He came from Scotland. She's like, no, I don't have it. I lent it to Rotier. She's down the hall. And then third floor. So then she writes, and then you go up to see Rotier, and you go to enough places, and then finally, after a while, you figure out what.
They tricked you.
Yeah. How do you know I tricked you?
Because signature.
How the hell can paint be striped, guys?
That's what I asked.
It's liquid. It cannot be striped. But maybe 7 or 8, in some cases 12 signatures into it, you'll sit there and go,
At least it's straight.
wait a second. Man, and then you realize there's a bunch of us on campus who are in on it together. And we have to know where you've already been. That's why everybody has to sign the paper. So I can't send you someplace that you've already been. So while you're gone, I do this. I tell everybody, here's what we're going to do. When Brandon gets back, I'm going to show you guys a series of pictures. Okay? And here's what we're going to do. The first picture I'm going to show you, I'm going to say, this is line A, line B, and line C. And I'm going to ask, and we'll normally do 4, but I need some more space here. And I'll say, okay, I'm going to ask you guys, which line is the longest, A, B, C, or C? When I ask you this, only half of you raise your hands. So then when he comes back, I'll ask you which is the longest line. Half of you will raise your hands for A, and maybe nobody for B, and then maybe nobody for C. And I'm going to put the cat back on my marker, and I'm going to yell at you guys. I told you, we need everyone participating in this. Quit screwing around. You're here. Participate. I'm like, okay, fine. Because we're all in on this together. And I go, okay, which is the longest line? How many say it's A? And all the hands in the room go up. Everyone realizes that the longest line is A, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then the next time I show you something like this. Now, which is the longest line? Is it A, B, or C? And then again, we go through it. We say A, no one raises their hand. Everyone raises their hands for B. And then finally we get to C, and everyone raises their hand. And after doing a few of these, I then show you something like this. A, B, C. And I go, all right, how many say that A is the longest line? And then everyone's hand goes up. So everyone knows that we're supposed to pick A, except for him. He doesn't know this. So he looks at it and he might be like, what? And he might, well, you might not. And then we'll say, how many say it's B? And of course, nobody, maybe nobody raised their hand. So now he might raise his hand for B. If he does raise his hand for B, we're all supposed to laugh at him like we know something he doesn't know, or whatever. Like, oh, okay. And remember, guys, stay off the drugs, right? We all laugh, whatever. And then I show you another one, which is very similar. That one is quite clearly not as long as the other. But we all know, and in fact I'll probably write them up on the board so we wouldn't screw it up so we know which ones we're supposed to choose. Anyway, the point is that after you do it just a few times, you'll find that the person who was out, and then came back and is not part of the experiment, will go along with the group and pick the shorter line, just to get along. Even though they can look right at it, they can see it and go, nah, B's clearly the longest line, they won't pick B, because the rest of the group is all picking A. That's why it's important for everybody to participate, because you don't want the person to not participate. You want it to be that everybody is raising their hands, so the person feels left out if they're not doing it. I've done this before in experiments where I've had students sitting in groups of 4. I've had just kind of like this, and I've only ever had one student who was actively resisted it and was like, no, that's the longer line. And it's funny is that he was an ROTC student, and after a while, maybe like 7 or 8 of these, he finally was going along, but he was going along with it, and he was just angry about it. He was just like folding his arms, and you could see he was like visibly pissed off. But he did go along with it. He did go along with it. Anyway, you can go look up these things on YouTube. You can see them being done in real time. And the guy, Ash, God, I wish I could remember his name right now. He publishes data on it, and it's just an overwhelming number of people who will go along with it. And it's been, again, done many times since then, of course, and the numbers still stay very high, people who go along with it. So that's why I was asking like for an example of something where people will just go along with the rest of the group, even though, So in this case here, what we're realizing is that it isn't just that people give into social pressure, like duh, that's obvious. But when you give into social pressure, it's the implication and the consequence of it. The implication and the consequence of it is the loss of self. In other words, we've got this kind of battle between the group and the individual. And if I ask you which is more important, the group or the individual, again, only one can take priority. You have to pick one or the other. But if we say it's the group, then the bigger the group, then the smaller the individual in terms of their value, if you follow what I'm saying. If the group is the most important thing, then what that means is that you, with your individual rights, your individual liberties, doesn't really matter. So for example, we talked about free speech. Free speech isn't about the group. Free speech is about the individual being able to say what they're thinking. Well, if you're not allowed to say what you're thinking, then you lose that sense of individuality. You're no longer you. You can't express yourself. You can't be yourself, because you instead have to belong to this overall group, if this makes sense. You think of it like, almost think of it like this. If the more rights you have, then the less power a government has. The more power a government has, the fewer rights you have, because they take over your rights. You can't have a big, robust individual and a big, robust government. You can't have both of them at the same time. One has to give way to the other. And the same is true with this. It's a loss of individuality. It's a loss of self. It's a loss of the person. Think of it like this, another way. Let's say that we live in, we'll just say we live in San Diego. We'll make it a big city. And there's a murder that happens in a neighborhood, and the people in the neighborhood are really concerned about it. Like, we don't have a lot of murders in this neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. So the police are trying to find somebody to pin this on, because the residents are scared. The residents are raising all kinds of hell with the cops. They're going to, they're going down to the police station. They're fighting. So the police finally just go, we need to find someone to put this on. So turns out they find a homeless guy who lives not too far away. Doesn't have any family. No one knows who he is. And they just say, listen, we can arrest this guy for the murder. We can pin it on him, and that will make the residents of the city feel much safer. They'll go back to life. They'll go back to living as normal, and then it'll look like we did our job. No one's going to miss this guy anyway. So if I ask that question, how many of you would be okay with framing the homeless man for the murder? I wonder how many of us would say yes. If you would not say yes, then that means that you think that there is something about an individual, their personal liberty, their sovereignty, their rights as an individual. If you sit there and go, well, to make an omelet, you gotta break some eggs. Yeah, arrest the dude, throw him in prison, execute him eventually. Well, then for that, then you're somebody who believes in collectivism. Took me a second. No, absolutely. And you're somebody who believes in collectivism. In other words, you think that the most important thing is keeping the group happy. The group's safe, not the individual. You guys have that teacher who punishes the whole class if one person does something? Yeah, there you go. That's a collectivist approach. That's not an individual approach. So on and so forth. So the bigger the crowd, however, if the crowd is a big crowd, then the individual simply doesn't matter. You get 1 million people and one person, that one person doesn't really matter so much. If you've got 10 people and one person matters a lot more. If you've got 3 people, one person of that group matters a lot more. But he's not just talking about numbers here. It isn't just like, oh, how big is the group. The crowd here would refer to, I guess, in the ways that we've talked about so far. People's views, people's opinions, how we express ourselves. The bigger that thing is, the more negligible you are as an individual. And so, again, I guess a lot will have to do with how it is that we come to view the importance of individuals versus the importance of groups. Are we concerned about individuals and individual rights, or are we concerned about the whole group and how the individual rights affect the whole group? Yeah.
Would it be like making the blue sky a paper?
I like the way you think, comrade. Go ahead.
Like, in jail, like, he has a bed, like, he has, like, food, or, like, well, don't they have games in jail, too?
Games?
Yeah. Like,
Water sports, yeah. Yeah, they play tag in the shower. It's a high stakes tag, but it's tag nonetheless.
Oh,
Yeah, we're showing you more. So we're doing by framing the homeless man for murder, we're doing him a favor. I like it. I like it, comrades. That's the way we think. I guess there's a couple ways of thinking about it. If the guy wanted to be in prison, wouldn't he be there already?
Yes.
Sure.
Because he could have done something to go to prison if he wanted to be there. So he clearly didn't want to be there. But then again, that's us as a society saying, well, we're going to decide for you. You don't get your individual rights. We don't really care about the individual. We collectively have decided this is the best thing for you. But I don't want to go. I want to stay, sleeping on the underpass. Shut up. Here, eat your meals, get your bed, go play your games, and hope you're quick, and then just enjoy life until we execute you for murder. Yeah, that's one way of thinking about it. Sure. I know. I wonder how many of you, if you're homeless, you'd want to be in prison instead. I don't know.
It seems scary.
I don't know. It's like when people say, like, man, if people were going to try to make me a slave, I would just die. I'd fight until I died. I don't know, dude. Hundreds of millions of people in the history of the world chose to become slaves instead of die. Remember, there have been a lot of slaves, man. Look at the Roman Empire. It was like something like one out of every 3 people living there was a slave, I think it was, like that. Maybe I'm thinking of Sparta. Yeah, a lot of people there decided to be slaves rather than die. And it's a weird thing, I shouldn't say a weird thing. I guess it is a weird thing for us to be so sure about it and say, well, if that was me, I would have. No. I don't know, man. I spent well, here you go. Here's something spicy. I spent the last, couple of decades hearing people look at what happened in World War II and say, like, how could the Nazis have done that? If it was me, I never would have gone along with them. I never would have just trusted the government and done what they did, blah, blah, blah. Saw a lot of y'all with masks the past couple of years, shutting down businesses and bankrupting people and reporting businesses that tried to make it because the state told you to do it. I am way less confident now than I was 5 years ago that people would stand up against that kind of a thing. And it isn't even a matter of whether you think we should or shouldn't lock down or should or shouldn't wear masks or anything like that. It's beyond that. It's how fast we were willing to turn on each other. Just because someone on a TV camera told us that that's what we should do. And because someone with I'm looking at at our governor who was all about it. We did a lockdown and we bankrupted so many people and suicide rates have gone through the roof, mental health crisis. All of this stuff that we sit there and we look at, like, oh, where did all this stuff come from? How short our memory. Just look back the past couple of years. It's all come from there. And it was led by a governor who no fewer than 3 times was caught on camera, not masked up, with friends, at restaurants, when they locked down the restaurants for all of us. His own restaurant, by the way. His own vineyard. And yet we look at that and we said, wow, and then we voted for him again. I don't know, man. I'm way less confident today than I was 5 years ago. that we would not turn on each other just like it happened in Germany. That stuff can happen so fast. We look at this stuff like with the lines and we're like, wouldn't be me. I know, man. When the experiments go down, you see how many people do it. We look at something like, people throwing other people in slavery. Wouldn't be me. I don't know, man. Hundreds of millions of people in the history of the world took that option rather than death. Look what happened in Nazi Germany. Wouldn't be me. I don't know, man. We turned on each other real fast the past couple of years. And those divides are still there. It's deeper than just whether or not you want to wear a mask. They've gone way deeper than just that. And so what I'm saying is that we don't really know human nature until we delve into it. And that gets at the heart of this. What was more important? Your right to wear one or not, or the collective group's decision whether or not you should wear one or not? Your decision whether or not to keep your own business open, or the collectivist's decision to decide whether or not you get to keep your business open? The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. That's a hard and fast rule of life, man. And that's a decision that every generation gets to make for itself. Problem is you can't roll back. That becomes difficult. So, see if that gets me demonetized. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? I've already got one strike on the channel. I have no idea why. You try to find out why, and they don't tell you why. They just say, violation of community standards. So it's okay for a classroom, but not for the internet? That's wild.